My name is Olivia Hayes, and 3 weeks ago I came home to find my sister had stolen my house. I don't mean she borrowed it. I mean she changed the locks, moved in her entire family, and told my neighbors I'd agreed to let her stay. When I pulled into my driveway after visiting my husband at his rehabilitation facility, I found her children's toys scattered across my lawn, her car in my spot, and a new nameplate on my door, one that didn't have my name on it. What happened next tested every boundary I thought I'd set with my family. It forced me to choose between keeping the peace and protecting what was legally mine. And it taught me that sometimes, the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. Before I tell you what I did with just one phone call that changed everything, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop a comment below. Let me take you back to the moment I pulled into my driveway that Friday afternoon. The drive from Marcus's rehabilitation facility usually took 2 hours, but that day it felt longer. My husband had been there for 10 days recovering from injuries sustained during a training accident. He's a veteran, and sometimes the body remembers old wounds. The doctor said he'd be home in 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'd spent every spare moment with him, only coming home to shower and grab fresh clothes. As I turned onto Maple Street, I noticed Denise's silver Honda parked in front of my house. My first thought was that she'd stopped by to check on things. She had a spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. But as I got closer, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There were boxes stacked on my front porch. Children's bicycles leaned against the garage door. A plastic playhouse sat in the middle of my carefully maintained front lawn. I parked on the street and walked up the driveway, my keys already in my hand. The brass key slid into the lock, turned halfway, and stopped. I tried again. Nothing. The lock had been changed. I stood there for a moment, staring at my own front door like it belonged to a stranger. Then I knocked. Denise opened it within seconds, as if she'd been waiting. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't look guilty. She looked settled. "Oh, you're back already?" she said, one hand on the doorframe. "I thought you'd stay with Marcus longer." I stared at my younger sister, trying to process what I was seeing. Behind her, I could see furniture I didn't recognize. Brett's work boots by the stairs. My sister's jacket hanging on my coat rack. "Denise," I said slowly, "why is my key not working?" She smiled. Actually smiled. "Oh, we needed a safe place, Liv. Just temporarily." I pushed past her into my own house. The living room had been transformed. Denise's floral couch sat where my leather sectional used to be. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, labeled kitchen, kids' room, master bedroom. That last one made my blood run cold. "What is all this?" I asked, my voice tight. Denise closed the door behind me. "Brett lost his job 3 weeks ago. The landlord evicted us. We had nowhere to go." "So you moved into my house?" "I knew you and Marcus don't have kids," she said, as if that explained everything. "This place is way too big for just 2 people. And with Marcus in rehab, you're barely here anyway. I figured you'd understand." The casual presumption in her voice, the way she'd already justified this to herself, left me momentarily speechless. "You figured I'd understand," I repeated. "Did you think to ask me first?" Denise's expression shifted, defensive now. "You've been stressed about Marcus. I didn't want to burden you with our problems. Family helps family live. That's what Mom always said." "Mom also said to ask before you borrow something." "This isn't borrowing. This is survival." She crossed her arms. "Besides, the neighbors already know we're here. I explained the situation to them. They all think it's wonderful that you're helping us out." That stopped me cold. "You told the neighbors what?" "That you agreed to let us stay while we get back on our feet. Mrs. Patterson even brought over a casserole yesterday. She said it was so generous of you." I felt the walls closing in. Denise hadn't just moved into my house. She'd constructed an entire narrative, one where I was the charitable older sister and she was the grateful recipient of my kindness. She'd weaponized the neighborhood against me before I even knew there was a battle. "Where's Brett?" I asked. "Getting the kids from school. They're enrolled at Lincoln Elementary now. It's so much better than their old school. My house, my neighborhood, my life." She'd claimed it all. I walked back outside to get my overnight bag from the car, needing a moment to think. That's when Mrs. Patterson appeared at her fence, pruning shears in hand. "Olivia, you're home," she smiled warmly. "It's so wonderful what you're doing for your sister's family." I set my bag down. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to explain something." "No need to be modest, dear. Denise told me everything about Brett's job situation. These are hard times. It takes a big heart to open your home like this." "But I didn't. And with your husband in rehabilitation too, you must be stretched so thin. But that's what family does, isn't it?" She patted my arm. "Your mother would be proud." Before I could respond, Mr. Kowalski from across the street called out from his driveway. "Olivia, good to see you. Your sister mentioned you'd agreed to this arrangement over the phone. Glad you two worked it out." Over the phone? Denise had thought of everything. "Actually," I started, but Mrs. Patterson was already nodding. "Yes, Denise said you'd been so understanding when she called you at the hospital, said you insisted they move in right away rather than go to a shelter." A shelter? That was a nice touch. Made me look heartless if I said no. I looked from Mrs. Patterson to Mr. Kowalski, both of them beaming at me like I was some kind of saint. Behind me I heard my front door open. Denise stood on the threshold, and in her hands was a small wooden sign. She walked to the door and hung it on the hook where my Hayes family plaque used to be. The new sign read, "The Morrisons." She'd erased me from my own home. I turned back to the neighbors, but they were already returning to their yards, satisfied with the story they'd been told. The story where I was the hero, not the victim. I sat in my car with the engine off, staring at my own house like it belonged to someone else. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Hey babe, you home safe?" "Marcus," my voice cracked. "Denise is in our house." "What do you mean in our house?" I told him everything, the changed locks, the furniture, the neighbors, the sign. He was quiet for a long moment. "Liv, you need to call a lawyer, now." "It's my sister. Maybe I can just—" "Listen to me." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "If Denise establishes residency there, if she changes her address on her driver's license, enrolls the kids in school with that address, gets mail delivered there, it becomes exponentially harder to remove her legally. You could be looking at a formal eviction process that takes months." "Months?" "And that's if she doesn't fight it. If she claims she has a verbal agreement with you or that you gave her permission, it gets even messier. You need documentation, you need a paper trail, and you need it now." I closed my eyes. The house I'd bought before Marcus and I even met, the house that was solely in my name, that I'd saved for years to afford, was being taken from me while I sat in the driveway. "There's someone who can help," I said slowly. "Linda Cho. Remember her from college? She's a real estate attorney now. She handled our title paperwork last year. Call her tonight. Don't wait." After we hung up, I sat there a moment longer. Through the window, I could see Denise moving around in my kitchen. Her kitchen now, apparently. She was laughing at something. Phone pressed to her ear, completely at ease. I pulled up Linda's contact. My finger hovered over the call button. If I made this call, there was no going back. This would become official, legal. A family matter would become a court matter. But what choice did I have? Before calling Linda, I opened Facebook. Our neighborhood had a private group, Maple Street Neighbors, where people shared everything from lost pets to yard sale announcements. I scrolled through the recent posts, and there it was. A post from Mrs. Patterson, 3 hours old. "Wonderful news! Olivia Hayes has opened her home to her sister's family during their time of need. Let's all welcome the Morrisons to the neighborhood." 23 likes, 15 comments. So generous. What a blessing to have family like that. We should organize a meal train to help them get settled. Someone had even commented, "I heard Olivia was hesitant at first, but she came around. Good for her for doing the right thing. Hesitant at first, Denise had even planned for my resistance, framing it as initial selfishness that I'd overcome. If I tried to kick her out now, I wouldn't just be evicting my sister. I'd be the villain who'd promised help and then reneged. My phone buzzed. A text from my Aunt Carol. Heard about Denise. Proud of you for stepping up. Another text. This one from my cousin. Mom told me you're letting Denise stay. You're a good sister. The narrative was spreading through my entire family. Denise had built a fortress of public opinion around herself, and I was on the outside looking in. I thought about going back inside, confronting her in front of Brett, demanding they leave. But what would that accomplish? The neighbors already believed her story. My family believed her story. If I called the police right now, I'd look like the heartless sister throwing a struggling family onto the street. But if I did nothing, if I let this go on for even a few more days, Marcus was right. It would become permanent. I opened my laptop, pulling up my Google Drive. Everything was there. The purchase agreement for the house, the title deed, the mortgage documents, the email trail with Linda from last year's closing. Every document had one name on it. Olivia Marie Hayes. Not Morrison. Hayes. I took a screenshot of the property deed and saved it to my phone. Then I called Linda. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a family member take advantage of your kindness? Someone who twisted your generosity into an obligation, who made you look like the bad guy for setting boundaries? How did you handle it? Please share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know I'm not alone in this. And if you're following along with this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because what I did with one phone call changed everything. Now let me tell you about that call. Before calling Linda, I knew I had to try one more time with Denise. I walked back into my house, and I had to remind myself it was still my house, legally, even if it didn't feel like it anymore. Denise was in the kitchen, unpacking dishes into my cabinets. She looked up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. Denise, you need to move out. She set down the plate she was holding. Liv, come on, don't be like this. Be like what? This is my house. And we're your family. We have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem to solve by having you steal my home. Her face hardened. Steal? That's a strong word. What would you call it? You changed my locks without asking. You moved in without permission. You lied to the neighbors. I didn't lie. I told them you agreed. But I didn't agree! Brett appeared from the hallway, drawn by our raised voices. Olivia, hey, can we talk about this calmly? I am calm, I said, though my hands were shaking. I'm asking you both to leave. You have 24 hours. Denise laughed. Actually laughed. 24 hours? Liv, we have 2 kids. You can't just throw us out. You threw yourselves in, without asking. Brett stepped forward, hands raised in a peacekeeping gesture. Look, I get that this is awkward. Just give us a week to find another place, please. A week becomes a month. A month becomes 3 months. I know how this works. Denise's voice rose. You're treating us like strangers, like we're criminals. You broke into my house and changed the locks. What would you call that? Family helping family, she was shouting now. But you've never understood that, have you? You've always been so independent, so self-sufficient. Well, some of us need help sometimes. Asking for help and taking without permission are not the same thing. Denise pushed past me and walked out onto the front porch. I followed, dread pooling in my stomach. Mrs. Patterson, she called across the yard. Mrs. Patterson, can you come here, please? Oh no. Mrs. Patterson looked up from her garden, then walked over to the property line. Mr. Kowalski, hearing the commotion, emerged from his garage. Within minutes, we had an audience. Mrs. Patterson, you heard Olivia agree to let us stay here, right? Denise's voice carried across the yard. When I talked to you yesterday? Well, yes, dear. You said Olivia had called you from the hospital and insisted you move in right away. Denise turned to me, her expression triumphant. See? You agreed. I never called you, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Mr. Kowalski stepped closer. Olivia, you can't kick a family with 2 young children out onto the street. I'm not kicking them out. They were never invited in. But your sister said, my sister lied. The words hung in the air. Mrs. Patterson's face fell. Mr. Kowalski frowned. And Denise looked at me with something close to pity. Liv, you're stressed about Marcus. You're not thinking clearly. We talked about this. You agreed. She was so convincing, even I almost believed her for a second. Brett came out onto the porch, putting a hand on Denise's shoulder. Maybe we should talk about this inside. No, Denise said firmly. I want the neighbors to understand what's happening here. My sister promised us a place to stay. Now she's going back on her word because it's inconvenient. The neighbors were looking at me now with something between confusion and disappointment. I could see the judgment forming. The story was already written in their minds. Heartless sister goes back on her promise. I looked at Denise, then at the neighbors, then at my house with someone else's name on the door. I need to make a phone call, I said quietly. Denise smirked. Calling who? The police? Go ahead. Tell them your sister is trespassing in the house you gave her permission to use. I didn't answer. I just walked to my car, got in, and closed the door. Through the car window, I watched Denise talking to the neighbors. She was animated, gesturing toward the house, probably explaining how unreasonable I was being. Mrs. Patterson patted her arm sympathetically. Mr. Kowalski nodded along. I pulled out my phone and found Linda's number. She answered on the third ring. Olivia? It's been forever. How are you? Linda. I took a breath. I need your help. Someone's in my house, and she's not leaving. There was a pause. Okay, start from the beginning. I told her everything. Denise's move-in, the changed locks, the neighbors, the Facebook post, the confrontation I'd just had. Linda listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, she changed the locks without your written consent? Yes. And she has no lease, no rental agreement, nothing in writing? Nothing. She just took it. Olivia, that's criminal trespass, possibly breaking and entering, depending on how she got in initially. She had a spare key I gave her years ago for emergencies. Did you give her permission to change the locks or move in? No, absolutely not. Then we have a clear case. Do you have your property documents, purchase agreement, deed, mortgage statements? Everything. It's all in my Google Drive. The house is solely in my name. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. Her voice shifted into professional mode. I'm going to draft a legal notice tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'll have it delivered to your sister's husband. Brett Morrison, correct? Yes, but why Brett? Because he has more to lose. He has a work history, a credit record. When he sees legal letterhead and understands the potential consequences, criminal charges, civil liability, impact on future housing applications, he'll convince her to leave. You think that'll work? I know it will. Trust me, Olivia. By tomorrow afternoon, they'll be packing. I wanted to believe her. But as I looked at my house, at Denise still holding court with the neighbors, I couldn't help wondering, what if she refused to leave anyway? What do you need from me? I asked Linda. Forward me everything you have, deed, mortgage documents, any communication with Denise about the house. Also, write down a timeline, when you left, when you discovered she'd moved in, what she said to you. Be specific. I can do that. One more thing. Do not engage with her anymore tonight. Don't argue, don't negotiate, don't make any promises. Just stay away until tomorrow. Where am I supposed to go? It's my house. I know, but right now we need to be strategic. If you stay there tonight and things escalate, it muddies the waters legally. Get a hotel room, keep your receipts. We can include that in the demand for damages. Damages. The word made it real. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was legal action. Linda, she's my sister. I know, and I'm sorry you're in this position. But she put you here, not the other way around. You have every right to protect your property. After we hung up, I sat in the car for a long time. Denise had gone back inside. The neighbors had dispersed. The street looked peaceful, normal, like nothing was wrong. I pulled up a hotel booking app and found a room at the Holiday Inn 2 miles away. As I started the engine, I looked at my house one more time. Through the living room window, I could see Denise and Brett moving around, settling in, making themselves at home. My home. I drove away, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like a stranger in my own neighborhood. That night, lying in a generic hotel room, I called Marcus again. "How'd it go with Linda?" he asked. "She's handling it. She's sending a legal notice to Brett tomorrow." "Good. You did the right thing." "Then why do I feel so awful?" "Because you're a good person, Liv. Good people don't like conflict, but protecting yourself isn't cruel. It's necessary." I stared at the ceiling. I keep thinking about when we were kids. Denise was always the one who needed protecting. I was the big sister. I took care of her. Protecting and enabling aren't the same thing. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been enabling her for years. The money you lent her that she never paid back. The job references. The times she borrowed your car and returned it with an empty tank. This isn't new behavior, Liv. It's just the biggest version of it. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. I set my alarm for 7 a.m., but I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Denise hanging that Morrison sign on my door. I saw Mrs. Patterson's disappointed face. I saw my own living room filled with someone else's furniture. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Denise. "Liv, can we please talk about this like adults? The kids are scared." I stared at the message. The kids are scared. Of course she'd use her children as leverage. I started typing a response 3 times and deleted it each time. Finally, I remembered Linda's advice. Don't engage. I turned off my phone. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went down to the hotel's breakfast area. The coffee was weak and the eggs were rubbery, but I sat there anyway, watching the morning news on the mounted TV without really seeing it. My phone buzzed again when I turned it back on. Another text from Denise. "You're really going to do this? Throw your own sister out?" Then one from Brett. "Olivia, please, just give us 2 weeks. That's all we need." 2 weeks? Then it would be a month. Then 2 months. Then I'd be the one needing a lawyer to evict them from my own house. I opened my email instead. Linda had sent me a draft of the legal notice at 5:30 a.m. I read through it carefully. Notice of unlawful occupancy and demand to vacate. The language was formal, uncompromising. It outlined the facts: that I was the sole owner of the property, that no permission had been granted for occupancy, that the changing of locks constituted unlawful entry. It demanded that Denise and Brett vacate within 48 hours or face legal action including criminal trespass charges and civil damages. At the bottom, Linda had added, "A process server will deliver this to Brett Morrison at his current place of employment at 9 a.m. I've confirmed he's working a Saturday shift at Henderson Electric. He'll get it in front of his coworkers. Sometimes public pressure is the best motivator." I replied, "Do it." Then I drove back to my house. I arrived at 9:30. Several neighbors were outside. It was Saturday morning, prime time for yard work and weekend errands. When I pulled up, Mrs. Patterson waved, but her smile was uncertain now. I got out of the car and walked toward my house. That's when I noticed Mr. Kowalski, Mrs. Patterson, and 2 other neighbors I recognized from the Facebook group standing in a small cluster near my driveway. "Olivia," Mrs. Patterson said carefully, "we wanted to talk to you." "About what?" "About your sister. Denise is very upset. She said you left last night and won't answer her calls." "That's correct." Mr. Kowalski cleared his throat. "Look, we don't want to get involved in family business, but then don't," I said, more sharply than I intended. "We're just concerned," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Those children need stability, And Denise said you'd agreed to help them. Denise lied. The words came out flat, final. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Kowalski said. It's the truth. I never gave her permission to move in. I never called her from the hospital. I never agreed to any of this. But she seems so certain. Of course she did. She's been lying to you since the moment she got here. A car pulled up behind mine. Denise emerged from the front door, saw me, and her face hardened. She walked down the driveway, Brett following reluctantly behind her. "Oh good, you're back," Denise said loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "Ready to apologize?" "Apologize for what?" "For abandoning your family when we needed you most." I looked at her, really looked at her. My little sister, who I'd protected from bullies in middle school, who I'd helped with homework and college applications, who I'd lent money to more times than I could count. She was looking at me like I was the enemy. "I have nothing to apologize for," I said, "but you will." "Excuse me? You broke into my house, you changed my locks, you lied to everyone here, and now you're going to face the consequences." Denise laughed, that same dismissive laugh from yesterday. "What consequences? You going to call the cops? Go ahead, tell them your sister needed help and you refused." "I don't need to call the cops. I called a lawyer." The laugh died. "What?" "A real estate attorney. She's sending you and Brett a legal notice. Should arrive any minute now, actually." Brett's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. "Denise," he said quietly, "I need to show you something." "Not now, Brett. I'm talking to my sister." "Denise, now." Something in his voice made her turn. He held out his phone. She grabbed it, read the screen, and her expression shifted from confident to confused to angry in the span of seconds. "What is this?" she demanded. "A text from my boss. A process server just came to the job site, gave me this." Brett pulled a folded envelope from his back pocket. His hands were shaking. The neighbors had gone quiet, watching. I stood perfectly still, letting the moment unfold. Brett opened the envelope and pulled out the legal notice. His eyes scanned the page, and I watched the color drain from his face. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What? What is it?" Denise snatched the papers from him. "Notice of unlawful occupancy and demand to vacate," she read aloud, her voice rising. "This is... You can't do this." "I can," I said calmly. "And I am." Brett looked at me, then at the notice, then at his wife. "Denise, this says we could face criminal trespass charges." "Criminal. That goes on your record." "She's bluffing." "It's from a law firm. It has a case number. This isn't a bluff." Mrs. Patterson stepped closer. "What's going on?" I turned to her. "Denise moved into my house without permission, changed the locks without my knowledge, told you all I'd agreed when I hadn't. This is a legal notice requiring her to vacate within 48 hours. But she said..." "She lied, Mrs. Patterson. About all of it." Denise's face had gone from pale to red. "You're making me look like a criminal in front of everyone." "You are a criminal. You broke into my house. I had a key. A key I gave you for emergencies, not for moving in." Brett was reading through the notice again, his lips moving silently. "Denise, this says they can sue us for damages. Legal fees, cost of changing the locks again, hotel expenses. I don't care what it says." "Well, I do. I just got this job. I can't have a criminal record." Denise turned to the neighbors, her voice desperate now. "She's lying. She told me I could stay. She called me from the hospital." I pulled out my phone. "I have my call history right here. No calls to Denise in the past 2 weeks." I held up the screen showing the log. Mrs. Patterson leaned in, squinting at it. I don't see any calls to Denise," she said slowly. "Maybe you texted," Denise said. "I have those too. Want to see?" Denise's mouth opened and closed. Brett put a hand on her arm. "Denise, stop." "No, she's making me look like a liar." "You are a liar," I said quietly. "You lied to me. You lied to the neighbors. You probably lied to Brett about what I said." Brett's face confirmed it. He'd believed his wife when she told him I'd agreed. He'd moved his family into my house thinking it was legitimate. Brett, I said, looking at him directly. Did you know she was lying? He shook his head, looking miserable. I asked her if she'd talked to you. She said you'd called and insisted we move in right away. She showed me texts that she said were from you. Texts she faked? I guess so. Denise grabbed his arm. Don't you dare turn on me. I'm not turning on you. But Olivia's right. We can't stay here. This is her house. It's my sister's house. Family shares. Family asks first, I said. You didn't ask. You took. Mr. Kowalski spoke up, his voice uncomfortable. Denise, if Olivia has proof that she didn't give permission— I don't need to prove anything, Denise shouted. This is my sister. She's supposed to help me. I would have helped you if you'd asked, I said. But you didn't ask. You lied, you manipulated, and you tried to steal my home. The word steal hung in the air. No one spoke. Even Denise seemed to realize she'd lost the crowd. Mrs. Patterson looked at me with something like apology in her eyes. Olivia, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. I know you didn't. She's very convincing. A car pulled into the driveway. A woman in a business suit stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. Denise looked at the woman, then at me. Who's that? That, I said, is my lawyer. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, when the truth finally came out in front of everyone. But before I continue, I want to ask you, have you ever had to confront someone publicly, with evidence in hand, to protect what was rightfully yours? How did it feel? Were people on your side, or did you have to fight for them to believe you? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories remind me that I'm not alone in this. If you're still with me, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss similar stories. Now, let me tell you what happened when Linda arrived. Linda Cho walked up my driveway with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and she carried herself like she owned the place, which, legally speaking, I did. Olivia, she said, extending her hand. Good to see you. Wish it were under better circumstances. Linda, thank you for coming. She turned to Brett, who was still holding the legal notice. Mr. Morrison, I'm Linda Cho, attorney representing Olivia Hayes. Have you had a chance to review the notice? Brett nodded mutely. Good. Do you understand the terms? Yes. We have to leave. Within 48 hours. If you fail to comply, we'll file for an emergency restraining order and pursue criminal trespass charges. Given that you changed the locks without the property owner's consent, the case is quite straightforward. Denise stepped forward. You can't do this. We have kids. Linda's expression didn't change. Mrs. Morrison, I understand your situation is difficult. However, occupying someone else's property without permission is illegal, regardless of your personal circumstances. If you need resources for temporary housing, I can provide you with a list of family shelters and assistance programs. We're not going to a shelter. Then I suggest you find alternative housing quickly. The 48-hour clock started when your husband received the notice at 9:15 this morning. Mrs. Patterson spoke up, her voice hesitant. Olivia, are you sure about this? They really have nowhere to go. Linda answered before I could. Mrs. Patterson, is it? I appreciate your concern, but this is a clear-cut case of unlawful occupancy. Ms. Hayes has been more than patient. Many property owners would have called the police immediately. But they're family, which makes the betrayal worse, not better, Linda said firmly. Family doesn't steal from family. The word steal, again. This time, coming from a lawyer, it carried even more weight. Mr. Kowalski cleared his throat. Olivia, I apologize. We should have asked more questions. It's not your fault. Denise was very convincing. Still, we jumped to conclusions. That wasn't fair to you. Denise's eyes were red now, tears streaming down her face. Liv, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. We were desperate. For a moment, just a moment, I felt myself wavering. This was my little sister, the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who'd been my maid of honor at my wedding. Then I remembered the Morrison sign on my door, the Facebook post, the lies told to my neighbors and family, the way she'd smiled when she opened my door yesterday, not surprised, not apologetic, just entitled. "You could have asked me," I said. "You could have called me and said, 'Liv, we're in trouble. Can you help?' I would have helped. I always have." "I know, but you didn't want my help. You wanted my house, and you were willing to lie and manipulate to get it. That's not fair." "Isn't it? You didn't just move in, Denise. You changed the locks. You told the neighbors I'd agreed. You enrolled your kids in school. You were planning to stay permanently, weren't you?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Brett looked at his wife with something like horror. "Denise, tell me she's wrong. Tell me you were planning to leave once we got back on our feet." Denise's silence stretched out. "Oh my God," Brett said. "You were going to stay. You were going to take her house. It's not taking. She doesn't need it. She doesn't have kids. She's barely here." "It's not yours," Brett's voice cracked. "Denise, what have you done?" Mrs. Patterson took a step back, her hand over her mouth. "I can't believe. Denise, how could you?" "You don't understand what it's like," Denise was shouting now. "None of you understand. You all have stable lives, stable jobs, stable everything. Some of us are drowning." "Then ask for a life raft," I said quietly. "Don't steal someone else's boat." Linda checked her watch. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, I suggest you begin packing. You now have 46 hours and 30 minutes. Denise looked around at the neighbors, at Linda, at me. She was searching for an ally and finding none. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice had lost its conviction. "Yes," Linda said. "It is." Linda opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "For the record, I have copies of all relevant documents here. Property deed, mortgage statements, title insurance, and the original spare key agreement signed by Olivia Hayes 3 years ago, which explicitly states, 'For emergency access only, not to be duplicated or used for occupancy purposes.'" She handed a copy to Brett. He read it, his face growing paler. "I didn't know about this," he said quietly. "I believe you, Mr. Morrison, which is why I'm not pursuing charges against you personally. But your wife knowingly violated the terms of this agreement. She used emergency access to facilitate an illegal occupation." Denise snatched the paper from Brett. "This is ridiculous. It's just a stupid key agreement." "It's a legal document with your sister's signature and a witness signature. It establishes that you understood the boundaries of your access to this property. You violated those boundaries. We're family. Families don't need legal documents." "They do when one family member violates the other's trust," Linda said. Her voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "Mrs. Morrison, I understand you're in a difficult position, but you made choices that have consequences. The consequence here is that you need to find somewhere else to live." She turned to me. "Olivia, do you want to press charges, or are you satisfied with the civil remedy?" I looked at Denise. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Brett had his arm around her, but he looked shell-shocked. "I just want my house back," I said. "If they leave within 48 hours and return my original locks and keys, I won't pursue criminal charges." Linda nodded. "That's generous. Mr. Morrison, you understand the terms?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. I'll be checking in tomorrow at this time to monitor your progress. If you're not actively packing, we move to Phase 2. "What's Phase 2? Denise asked, her voice small. "Sheriff's deputies and criminal trespass charges. I suggest we avoid that." Brett nodded quickly. "We'll be out. I promise." Linda handed him her business card. "If you need those shelter resources, call this number. There are programs that can help." After Linda left, the neighbors slowly dispersed. Mrs. Patterson touched my arm as she walked past. "I'm sorry, dear. We should have listened to you." "It's okay. You didn't know." But as I watched her walk away, I realized something. They should have known. They should have asked me directly instead of taking Denise's word for it. That hurt almost as much as Denise's betrayal. I didn't go inside. I couldn't bear to watch them pack up my house, to see them dismantling the life they'd tried to build in my space. Instead, I sat on the front steps, far enough away to give them room but close enough to ensure they were actually leaving. Linda had advised me to stay visible. Don't give them any opportunity to claim you abandoned the property or gave them permission to stay longer. Your presence is important. So I sat there, scrolling through my phone without really seeing it, listening to the sounds of boxes being taped and furniture being moved. After about an hour, Denise's daughter, Emma, 7 years old, came outside. She looked at me with big, confused eyes. Aunt Liv? Why are we leaving? My heart broke a little. Hey, Emma. Mommy said we're moving again. She's crying. I didn't know what to say to that. How do you explain to a child that her mother lied and stole? How do you tell her that sometimes grown-ups make terrible choices? I'm sorry you have to move, sweetie. Are you mad at Mommy? I'm disappointed. But I'm not mad at you. She nodded solemnly, then went back inside. Through the window, I saw her climb onto the couch, my couch, which would be back to being my couch in less than 2 days, and hug a stuffed rabbit. Brett came out an hour later carrying a box to their car. He paused when he saw me. I really am sorry, Olivia. I didn't know she was lying to you. I thought this was all arranged. I believe you. I should have questioned it more, should have insisted on talking to you directly. I wanted to believe we had somewhere safe to go. I understand. But Brett, you need to know. This isn't the first time Denise has done something like this. Maybe not this extreme, but the pattern is there. The borrowing money and not paying it back. The using people and then getting angry when they set boundaries. He was quiet for a long moment. I know. I've been making excuses for her for years, telling myself it's just stress or bad luck or I don't know, but this is different. This is the same, just bigger. Yeah. He loaded the box into the trunk. I'm going to insist she get help, therapy or something. This can't keep happening. That's between you and her. But Brett, don't let her do this to someone else. I won't, I promise. Denise didn't come out until late afternoon. By then, most of their belongings were packed. I was still on the steps, now with a coffee I'd picked up from the corner store. She stood in the doorway looking at me. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked small, defeated. Can we talk? She asked. Okay. She sat down on the step below me, not quite close enough to touch. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I really am sorry, she finally said. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I believe you're sorry you got caught. She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You were perfectly happy living here, lying to everyone, until I showed up with a lawyer. I was desperate, Liv. We were about to be homeless, the kids. You could have asked me for help. You know I would have helped. Would you? Really? Or would you have given me a lecture about financial responsibility and making better choices? The accusation stung because it was partially true. I had lectured her before, about budgeting, about job stability, about planning ahead. Maybe, I admitted, but I still would have helped. I always have. I know, and I took advantage of that. I know I did. She wiped her eyes. But you have to understand, Liv. You've always had everything together. Good job, nice house, perfect husband. Some of us aren't like that. Some of us struggle. Having things together doesn't mean I'll let you steal from me. I wasn't stealing. I was surviving. By taking what wasn't yours. That's stealing, Denise, no matter how you justify it. She was quiet again. Then, are you ever going to forgive me? I thought about that. Maybe, someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. You broke my trust, And that's not something you can fix with an apology. So that's it? We're done? We're not done. You're my sister. But things are different now. They have to be. Because I crossed a line. Because you didn't just cross a line, you obliterated it. And then you lied about where the line was in the first place. Denise stood up, brushing off her jeans. For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt you. But you did. And you need to own that. She nodded slowly, then went back inside. They left at 7 p.m. on Sunday, 12 hours before the 48-hour deadline. Brett loaded the last box into their car, while Denise strapped the kids into their car seats. Emma waved at me through the window. I waved back. Before they drove away, Brett walked over and handed me a small envelope. The original keys, all of them, and the new ones Denise had made. Thank you. We're staying with my brother in Cleveland for now. It's temporary, but it's something. I'll text you our address once we're settled, in case, I don't know, in case you need it for legal purposes. I appreciate that. He hesitated. Olivia, I know this doesn't change anything, but I'm going to make sure this never happens again, to you or anyone else. Good luck, Brett. He got in the car and drove away. I watched until they turned the corner and disappeared from view. Then I walked into my house. It was a mess. Furniture pushed around, boxes they'd abandoned, trash bags full of things they couldn't fit in the car. But it was mine again. I called a locksmith. He arrived within an hour, a friendly man in his 60s who didn't ask questions about why I needed all the locks changed. He just did the work, handed me 3 new keys, and wished me a good evening. After he left, I stood in my living room and turned the new key over in my hand. Such a small thing, but it represented everything. My autonomy, my boundaries, my right to say no. I called Marcus. They're gone. The locks are changed. It's over. How do you feel? I thought about that. Tired, sad, but relieved. Is that okay? It's more than okay. You did what you had to do. I know, but I wish I hadn't had to. I know, babe, I know. That night, I slept in my own bed, in my own house, with my new keys on the nightstand. And for the first time in days, I slept through the night. Linda called me 2 days later. Olivia, I wanted to update you on the legal situation. I filed the incident report with the county clerk's office. Denise Morrison now has an official warning on record for unlawful occupancy. What does that mean exactly? It means if she ever tries something like this again, with anyone, not just you, there's a documented history. It'll come up in background checks for rental applications, loan applications, certain types of employment. It's not a criminal record, but it's a red flag. I was quiet, processing that. So she'll have a harder time finding housing. She'll have to be honest about what happened. Most landlords will see that warning and decline her application. She'll probably need to find someone willing to rent without a background check or go through a housing assistance program. That seems harsh. It's proportional. She illegally occupied someone's property. There have to be consequences, or she'll do it again. What if I wanted to drop it? Remove the warning? Linda paused. You could file a motion to expunge the record, but I'd advise against it. Not out of vindictiveness, but because Denise needs to understand that actions have consequences. If you erase this, you're telling her she can get away with it. I'm not trying to punish her, I just want her to learn. Then let the consequence stand. It's not destroying her life. She can still find housing, just not as easily. She can still work, still function, but she has to work harder now. That's fair. I thought about Emma and her little brother, how this would affect them. But then I thought about the Morrison sign on my door, the lies told to my neighbors, the violation of my home. Okay, I said. Leave it on record. Good. Now, I've also prepared a civil demand letter for the cost of changing the locks, my legal fees, and your hotel expenses. Do you want to pursue that? No, I just want this to be over. Understood. But Olivia, keep all your receipts anyway, just in case. In case of what? In case she tries to sue you for emotional distress or some other nonsense. It's unlikely, but people do strange things when they're backed into a corner. The thought hadn't even occurred to me. She wouldn't. Probably not. But document everything just to be safe. 3 days after they left, I got a text from Denise. Liv, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I'm truly sorry. Not just sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. I was wrong. I violated your trust and your home. I made choices that hurt you, and I can't take them back. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm going to work on being better. For my kids, for Brett, for myself. I hope someday we can talk again, but I understand if that day never comes. I read it 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold in my hands. Marcus was home now, sitting across from me. His physical therapy was going well, and being back in our house, our actual house, not occupied by my sister, was helping his recovery. What are you going to say? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to respond, to tell her I appreciate the apology, but another part of me thinks responding would just open the door again. What does your gut tell you? I looked at the message again. It seemed genuine, but so had Denise's smile when she opened my door that first day. My gut says to wait. If she's really changing, she'll prove it through actions, not words. And if she's not, well, responding won't change that either. So you're not going to reply? Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. You don't owe her anything, Liv. Not even a response. I know, but she's still my sister. She's still your sister who stole your house. I know that too. I put my phone face down on the table and didn't respond. Not that day, not the next day, not the day after that. 2 weeks later, I got another text. I understand why you're not responding. I just wanted you to know I'm in therapy now. Working through some things. No pressure to reply. Just wanted you to know. I saved both messages but still didn't respond. The neighborhood's attitude toward me shifted completely. Mrs. Patterson came over one afternoon with a plate of cookies and a sincere apology. I feel terrible about how we treated you, she said. We should have asked you directly instead of taking Denise's word for it. It's okay, she was convincing. Still, we made you feel like the villain in your own home. That wasn't right. She wasn't the only one. Over the next few weeks, several neighbors stopped by or sent messages. Mr. Kowalski helped Marcus fix our fence without being asked. The woman 3 doors down, who I'd only met once before, brought over a casserole and said, I heard what happened. I'm sorry we didn't believe you right away. The Facebook group post from Mrs. Patterson was edited to read, Update. There was a misunderstanding regarding the Morrison family situation. Please respect the Hayes family's privacy during this time. The comments under it were revealing. I knew something seemed off. We should have asked more questions. Poor Olivia. Can't imagine dealing with that from your own sister. One person wrote, This is why we need to verify things before jumping to conclusions. Someone else replied, Agreed. I feel awful for assuming Olivia was the bad guy here. The vindication felt strange. I'd wanted people to know the truth, but now that they did, I felt exposed. Everyone knew my sister had betrayed me. Everyone knew our family drama. Mrs. Patterson must have sensed this because she said, For what it's worth, people aren't gossiping. They're just concerned and embarrassed that they didn't support you from the start. I appreciate that. Have you heard from Denise? A few texts. I haven't responded. She nodded approvingly. Good. You need space. She needs to understand that apologies don't erase actions. That phrase stuck with me. Apologies don't erase actions. It was true. Denise could say sorry 1,000 times, but it wouldn't change what she'd done. It wouldn't restore the trust she'd broken. I ran into Brett at the grocery store 4 weeks after they'd left. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd shaved his beard and looked thinner, more worn down. Olivia, he said, stopping his cart. Hey. Brett. How are you? We're managing. I got a job with an electrical company in Cleveland. It's good work, steady. That's good. We found an apartment. Small, but it's ours. Well, rented. But you know what I mean. I'm glad you're getting settled. He hesitated, then said, I wanted you to know, I've been going to therapy with Denise, couples counseling. We're working through a lot of stuff. That's good, Brett. She's she's trying, really trying. She knows she messed up. She knows she hurt you. He paused. She asks about you sometimes, wants to know if you've responded to her messages. I haven't. I know. I told her not to expect you to, that you need time, and maybe you'll never be ready. She's having a hard time accepting that, but she's trying. I believed him. Brett had always been straightforward, honest to a fault. If he said Denise was trying, she probably was. I hope it works out for you both, I said, and I meant it. Thank you. And Olivia? I'm sorry. I should have questioned things more. Should have insisted on talking to you before we moved in. I let Denise convince me it was all arranged, and that was wrong. You were in a tough spot. I understand. Still, I'm sorry. After he left, I stood in the cereal aisle for a long time, thinking about second chances and forgiveness, and whether some bridges could ever be rebuilt. I didn't have an answer. Marcus's recovery progressed faster than expected. 6 weeks after the incident with Denise, he was walking without a cane and back to most of his normal activities. The physical therapist said he'd probably always have some stiffness in his left leg, but overall, he'd made remarkable progress. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, something we couldn't do when Denise's family had taken over the house, watching the sunset. You know what I realized? Marcus said. What? We never got to just be in our house together. I got injured, went to rehab, and when you came home, Denise had taken over. We never got to just exist here. He was right. We'd bought the house 18 months ago, but between his deployment, his injury, and the Denise situation, we'd barely lived in it together. We're here now, I said. Yeah, we are. He took my hand. How are you doing? Really? I'm okay. Better than I was. Do you regret how you handled it? I thought about that. No, I wish it hadn't come to that. I wish Denise had just asked for help instead of taking. But given what actually happened, no, I don't regret protecting our home. Good, because you shouldn't. You set a boundary, a reasonable, necessary boundary, and you enforced it. That's not cruel. That's self-respect. I keep thinking about Emma and her brother, though, how this affected them. That's on Denise, not you. She put her kids in that situation. You didn't. I know, but it still hurts. Of course it does. You're not heartless. But Liv, you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even family, especially family sometimes. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to dark blue. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing. A dog barked. Normal neighborhood sounds. Our neighborhood, our house, our life. I'm proud of you, Marcus said quietly. For what? For standing up for yourself. For not backing down. For being stronger than you thought you could be. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I had help. Yeah, but you made the call. You did the hard thing. Yeah, I said. I did. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything I'd learned from the situation. I'd learned that boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out. They're guidelines that define how you want to be treated. I'd spent years being the accommodating older sister, the one who loaned money and didn't ask for it back, the one who helped without question. I'd thought that made me a good person. But somewhere along the way, accommodation had become enabling. And Denise had learned that she could push, and I would give. She could take, and I would allow it. Until she took too much. I'd also learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. I wasn't cruel for protecting my home. I was clear about what was acceptable and what wasn't. Denise had crossed that line, and there were consequences. The hardest lesson was this: you can love someone and still refuse to be treated poorly by them. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own well-being for someone else's comfort. Real love, healthy love, includes respect. And respect includes boundaries. Marcus had fallen asleep beside me, his breathing steady and peaceful. I looked around our bedroom, my bedroom, the one I'd almost lost, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. I didn't need Denise to change for me to be okay. I didn't need her to understand why what she did was wrong. I didn't need her apology or her acknowledgement or her validation. I just needed to know that I could protect myself, that I could say no, that I could draw a line and enforce it, even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when people I loved were on the other side of that line. That knowledge, that certainty, was worth more than any apology Denise could offer. So that's my story. I'm not telling you this to paint myself as a hero or to vilify my sister. I'm telling you this because I want you to know something important. You have the right to protect what's yours. You have the right to say no. You have the right to set boundaries even with family, especially with family. If someone in your life is taking advantage of your kindness, manipulating your generosity, or violating your trust, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to make excuses for them. You don't have to sacrifice your own well-being to make them comfortable. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect. And if you're in a situation like mine, where someone has violated your property, your trust, or your rights, know that you're not alone. There are resources available. There are lawyers who specialize in this. There are laws that protect you. You don't have to face it by yourself. I want to ask you, have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with a family member? How did you handle it? How did it feel afterward? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help others who might be going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you want to see more stories like this, stories about standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and protecting what matters, check out the playlist linked below. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, your home is your sanctuary. Don't let anyone take that from you. As for Denise and me, I don't know if we'll ever rebuild our relationship. Maybe one day she'll truly understand what she did and why it was wrong. Maybe one day, I'll be ready to let her back into my life, with clear boundaries this time. But that day isn't today. And that's okay. I'm at peace with my decision. I protected my home, my marriage, and my sense of self. And I'd do it again. Before you go, I have one more question for you. If you were in my situation, what would you have done? Would you have called a lawyer immediately, or would you have tried to work it out within the family first? Comment A if you would have called a lawyer right away, or B if you would have tried to resolve it without legal help. I'm really curious to see what you think. And don't forget to check out the next video in my playlist. There are more stories about family drama, boundaries, and standing up for yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.